Right, here we go. Right, there we go. Right, we're on. Welcome to the rabbit hole. Welcome back to the rabbit hole if you've been here before, and welcome newcomers if you haven't been here before. This is the rabbit hole. Shalini doesn't want to see the fourth wall. Well, don't start at 9 o'clock then. That's what happens. Good God, people are so demanding. Why are they so demanding? Anyway, good evening, Ed. Our first rabbit hole. Well, it's fine by me. Oh, no, hold on. You were muted. Try it now.
I was muted. That's not helpful.
Yeah, I muted you because I was getting feedback and I didn't want people to hear your toilet flushing.
Right, yeah, fair point.
Right, you should be fine.
They didn't hear my toilet flushing either.
Right, people, see if you can hear Ed now. Okay, now, says Nick to read us. He's a sound
Excellent.
guy. I'll take his word for it. Thank you.
This is an absolute diamond.
Yes. Right, here we go. Let's crack on. So, new format tonight. So, we're just exploring the new format. So, bear with us. I'm going to read out the story, which should only take us 8 to 10 minutes, if that. And then Ed and I will be digging into the details. Okay, so should I go full screen for that? No, I'll leave you on. Tonight's tale takes us to Ellensburg, Washington, a place famous for, well, it's not famous for much at all, except for one thing, Mel's Hole. Yes, you heard me right, a hole. But not just any hole. This is the hole. A hole so mysterious, it makes Loch Ness look like a kiddie pool. Our story begins in 1997 when a man called Mel Waters called into the late-night radio show Coast to Coast AM. Mel claimed he had discovered a bottomless pit on his property in Kittitas County. And when I say bottomless, I mean he allegedly lowered 80,000 feet of fishing line into it and still didn't hit the bottom. That's 15 miles. So either Mel was a proud owner of the world's longest fishing line, or he was spinning a tale taller than Bigfoot. But wait, this isn't just a hole. It's a magical hole. So according to Mel, this thing had powers straight out of a sci-fi movie. He claimed that radios near the hole played old-timey music from another dimension. A bucket of ice lowered into the pit, came back warm, but still solid. And flammable? Oh, and here's the kicker. His neighbour tossed their dead dog into the hole. And later saw it alive and, wandering through the woods like nothing happened. That's right. Mel's Hole might double as a pet resurrection service. Now, as someone who's spent 20 years in law enforcement, I've seen my share of tall tales, but this one takes the biscuit. And it probably dunks it in tea first. Geologists have pointed out there's quite a few flaws in this. A pit this deep would collapse under its own weight due to pressure and heat from the Earth's crust. Science hasn't stopped people from obsessing over Mel's Hole. And then there's the government. According to Mel, federal agents swooped in faster than you can say classified. They allegedly seized his land, paid him off, and relocated him to Australia. Because apparently, bottomless pits are now national security threats. Mel even claimed he found another similar hole in Nevada. At this point, I'm starting to wonder if this man just had an affinity for finding holes. So what do we make of this? Is Mel's Hole an abandoned mine shaft? A hoax cooked up by a bored guy with too much fishing line? Or could it be something more? One thing's for sure, this story has captured imaginations for decades. And while no one's ever found definitive proof that Mel or his hole ever existed, it remains one of those enduring urban legends that keeps us scratching our heads. So, what do we think about Mel's Hole, Ed? Is it just an elaborate prank or something more mysterious?
Oh, for me, this is classic rabbit hole material, and it's even better because it's a hole in the ground. I mean, in terms that The thing about this that I find I wouldn't say compelling is the right word, but interesting is that Art Bell is a very famous radio host. And yes, he's a showman. So he's the kind of person that even if he thinks someone is telling a tall tale, he'll still give them airtime because that's what his listeners like. And he's been going for a really long time too. And he did ask pointed questions during the times that he did talk to Mel. He didn't just give him a free ride.
Yeah.
But as you say, nobody has found Mel's hole, apparently. I mean, Mel says that the government ruined his life and it cost him his house and his family, and
well, the government
they
ruined me,
shipped him off to Australia, and then he decided to go back to the US, and it's a very rabbit holey sort of story.
But the government did the same thing for me. They ruined my life. It cost me my house, my job, my businesses, but they didn't ship me off to Australia, unfortunately.
Well, given what's happening in Australia, that's probably not such a bad thing.
Well, to be fair, the Australians seem to have really lost the plot, haven't they? So
they lost the plot 4 years ago.
If you had a deep bottomless pit, what would you do with it? I mean, really?
Well, the first thing that springs to mind is what Mel did, which is to try and figure out how deep it is. And just for the record, he didn't have a 15-mile fishing line. He had loads of spools of 5,000 meters or 5,000 feet of line, and he connected them together as he was supposedly sending his weight down the hole. And also, the other thing is that, according to Mel, all of his neighbors used to use this hole as the rubbish dump. Mm-hmm. They literally throw rubbish, sofas, cars. Well, I don't think it's big enough for cars, but refrigerators and ovens and all kinds of stuff, and the hole never filled up. And also you couldn't hear anything at the bottom.
So what about the dog thing, though? Right? So if the dog was real and he saw the dog in the woods, why wouldn't the dog come back to him? As if, cause you know what dogs are like? They love their owners, generally.
Absolutely. I mean, and supposedly it had the collar on as well. It wasn't just there was an identifying feature in that collar, apparently. I mean, obviously none of this has been corroborated. So
actually, let's come back to the start, because nothing's corroborated here. No one's ever found this guy, Mel Waters. There's no trace of him having owned land in that county or in Nevada, or in fact anywhere in America. So there's just no trace, and there's no trace of him.
Yeah, but it's not difficult for the government to remove that information. And supposedly, well, no, this is just it is a fact that the government can make people disappear if they want to. Well, no, I'm not talking about witness protection. I'm talking about perhaps one theory, however outlandish you might think it, is that this hole has some sort of special properties. I mean, there are other stories about holes in the ground that lead to subterranean hollow earth type places. I mean, there's legends in most cultures actually have legends about underworld realms.
Oh yeah.
I think the Indians call it Agartha, the Buddhists or the Hindus or whoever, that part of the world. So say, just humor me for a minute, and let's say this hole had some sort of special magnetic properties, or some sort of, I don't know, maybe it's a rift in space-time or some sort of interdimensional thing. And somewhere in another dimension, there's a big pile of rubbish that nobody knows where it's coming from. And then the government would obviously step in and say, no, we need to control that. And so they just make Mel disappear.
Is that what's happening here? Is that what's happening
I'm not
here,
saying it is.
No, but is there a hole?
I'm not saying it is.
No, but is there a hole in another world or another dimension which aliens are throwing the rubbish into, and it's now called India?
I don't know. Well, I don't think there's any need for the rubbish to come out of the sky, frankly. But then there are parts of Earth where aliens could be chucking rubbish in through another dimension. Nobody would really notice.
Yeah, I know. I saw a guy today on Twitter moaning about someone tipping a bin into a river in India. And I thought, he's obviously never seen, the council, the municipal lorries turning up and just dumping the whole fucking lorry into the rivers. You ever seen that? It's just mental. It's mental. Anyway, right, let's get back to this whole. So, 15 miles of fishing line. If you genuinely, let's just assume this hole's real and it went 15 miles deep. The fishing line would melt.
But he never got to the bottom. He ran
Yeah,
out
but it
of
wouldn't
fishing
have
line
mattered.
before he got to the bottom.
Fishing line would have melted because, what is it, the Kola borehole? That's like, what is that, 8 kilometres or 8 miles or something? And the heat down there at 8 miles depth is almost enough to start melting steel, I think. So fishing line just wouldn't exist at that kind of 15 miles depth. It would just shrivel up, be nothing left. But not getting to the bottom is a bit strange. So then you go on to the interdimensional aspect, yeah? And if it's not getting to the bottom, maybe it has got to the bottom, it's just popped out into the other dimension.
Well, I mean, there are, okay, I realize it's far-fetched, but there are natural formations like lava tubes, for example. I don't know if you can have a 15-mile long straight-ass lava tube, but that would be a structure because of the...
Yeah, but the heat, mate. You couldn't drop a fishing line down it. That's the problem.
Well, that's the thing. Is that if it had a some sort of connection deep into the earth, then you would expect it to heat up.
It would heat up. Yeah, if it was 15 miles deep, it would heat up.
But then
go on.
I mean, if it was a portal to another dimension, how and why would such a thing exist as a hole in the ground in some random place on the planet? And if that's the case, then one would reasonably expect there to be more of them.
Yeah, see, this is the problem. And this is where, when you start to apply, the cold, hard facts of science to it, you're thinking, well, first of all, to create such a portal would require an immense amount of energy. And to sustain it would surely require a constant stream of energy. Now, I know you're going to say something like, what if it came from the 0 point or whatever? Fair enough.
No, I was actually going to say, what if it's somehow some sort of strange natural phenomena? I mean, in the same way that we have ley lines and we have places on the planet that are more electromagnetically active or less electromagnetically active, or things like I realize it's not the same thing, but we have the southern anomaly in the Atlantic, where the Earth's geomagnetic field is essentially non-existent.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I can't think of what sort of natural or even electromagnetic processes might create some sort of rip in the fabric of space-time, because that's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it would also surely have other implications. I mean, holes tend to be two-way, is that you can climb in and you can climb back out again. Now, I think they lowered a sheep. One of the experiments that they tried supposedly was lowering a sheep in there, and the sheep died, and it was like it had been cooked from the inside.
Well, that lines up with a deep hole, because it would generate heat. I don't know how far down they let the sheep go, though.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. So,
but it's also, I mean, with the ice experiment, don't forget that supposedly not all of the ice blocks melted because they're
and the ones that weren't
um,
melted were flammable.
yeah, absolutely, and solid and didn't melt. And what would do that to water? I mean, as far as I know, there is nothing you can do to water molecules apart from break them apart that makes them flammable.
Yeah.
And certainly nothing that would would fundamentally change the properties of ice.
I found the movie, or it's not a movie, it's a TV series. Well, it's a Amazon Prime series. It's called Outer Range. So it stars starring Josh Brolin. It's widely believed to draw inspiration from the legend of Mel's Hole. It does. The show features a mysterious and seemingly supernatural hole on a ranch in the American West, and it echoes key elements of Mel's Hole. While Outer Range is fictional and not an adaptation, sure, it's a complete and utter theft of it. Its themes and premises align closely with the eerie claims made by Mel Waters on Coast to Coast AM in the 90s. Yeah, this is because I remember they had people jumping, or he shot someone and dumped them in the hole, and the guy came back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that echoes the dead dog thing, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the things I did find interesting about this is that Mel never tried to make any money out of it. He didn't write books or sell T-shirts or speak to the media or really speak to anyone apart from Art Bell.
Yeah.
And then after a while, Art was trying to call him and he didn't respond and he wasn't answering his phone, and then the phone got cut off. But generally, when people do these sorts of things as a hoax, there's usually something else to it. There's a grift there, and they're trying to make money somehow, or they want to get famous and become celebrities or whatever. And they always over promote themselves, like your friend Lou Elizondo. I mean, there's a classic.
Yeah, I'm not in it for the money. My life's been ruined. You know, we've lost all our money. But buy my book.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so for someone to just phone up, particularly coast to coast. I mean, we're not talking about a small radio show at all. I mean, it was syndicated around the world. It was listened to by tens of millions of people. And so to go on a show like that with claims like Mel was making, because when he first called Art Bell, the way he makes it sound is very much like he's got this thing he doesn't understand and he's not sure what it is. And so he's going to call a radio show where maybe people have an idea about it or something like that. That was sort of, that kind of how he came across at the beginning. I mean, the stories do get...
It's a bit like these days you'd go on Reddit and come away going, I've still got no fucking idea.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's the fact of him not trying to make any money out of this, which for me is it's a small thing, but it's actually one of the more interesting aspects to this, because so many people, I mean, we've encountered so many of them doing our rabbit hole shows where they are literally just charlatans trying to make money off urban legends or popular stories or
just look
whatever.
At Twitter just now. Just look at Twitter just now. It's still posting pictures and videos of planes and purporting them to be things that they aren't. I mean, people seem to have genuinely lost their freaking mind. People are nuts.
I think the thing with Twitter is, I suspect that a lot of it has to do with the monetization of it. And because if you can make yourself a big account and you can get lots of interactions, you can actually make a lot of money on Twitter. I mean, there are people that are making multiple thousands of dollars a month of that platform. And so that's an incentive for people to post things because they think they're going to get views and shares rather than because they think something's genuine. I mean, I made the mistake of, you might have seen it, it was that video of 3 fires starting, and it was being claimed that that was LA, and it was community noted a few hours later. So I mean, I deleted the tweet, but it's very, very easy to fall for these things. And in that, if you have enough, the thing is that if you have enough people, if you have enough followers, or you get a big account to retweet you or something, and even if the lifespan of this tweet is a couple of hours before everyone's realized it's BS and it gets community noted all over the place, that's actually still potentially an awful lot of money that someone could make.
Yeah, community notes are rubbish because they don't they're never quick enough. So you know, it doesn't matter. By the time you get a community note on it, it's too late. You know, the people who made their money, it's hit and run.
Yeah, but the problem is to make the community note system any faster, you'd have to take out.
Wrong.
Exactly, and also it allows for more gaming, because I mean the community note system is already being gamed because of the powers that be having loads of burner accounts that just jump on these things and start community noting them. Unfortunately, because it's open source and because people can vote them down, you can fight back against them, so to speak.
That's a good point, because I remember going to, when I was in IT, I remember going to, I think it was probably a Microsoft event or something, and we're talking about, I think we were actually talking about SharePoint and using the chat within SharePoint as an internal chat thing. And one of the points was that you didn't need to moderate it because the cream would float to the top, right? And when they actually built it and started using it, what you actually find was the shit floated to the top. Not the cream. You never saw the cream because it was covered in shit. That was a problem.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, especially with the internet. I mean, I've been working online for my whole career, pretty much since I left university, and I've seen it go from this niche thing that no one was taking seriously. I mean, I've actually sat in a meeting in Lloyd's of London? I think it was with one of the syndicates or whatever at Lloyd's of London. And I was told flat out by this person, the internet is not going to be relevant to the insurance industry. We're not interested in it. We're not going there.
Yeah.
And 5 years, 6 years after that, was when Direct Line first started, and that was completely internet only insurance. So
now try and find insurance without using the internet.
Well, exactly, and that's the way it is now.
Yeah.
But it's also gone from. I think there was a golden period, probably for 2 or 3 years after Google first came out, where someone had finally cracked search, because before Google there was Alta Vista. And I mean, I can still remember, this is how much of an internet dinosaur I am, is I can still remember Yahoo's very, very original URL, which was, because they were at Stanford, it was accabono.stanford.edu/tilde Yahoo. And I typed that in so many times, I just got to memorize it.
Did you have an AOL account at any point?
No.
Did you have a MySpace account?
I used my Yahoo account as my main one until Gmail came along.
Did you ever have a MySpace account?
No.
Do you know what MySpace was?
Yes, obviously. Yeah.
Do you remember GeoCities?
Yes, I remember GeoCities. MySpace and GeoCities were both very good examples of why 90% of the people on this planet can't design websites.
Yeah. GeoCities is an abomination that even Picasso wouldn't have dared to put paper.
It was horrific, but it was
Yeah.
also, in a way, it was cool because it was the Wild West. It was like in the same way that the Wild West didn't have the infrastructure and they had these kind of scattered towns and everyone was riding around on horseback and there's not really any laws and the authorities kind of ignore it because it's just niche. But nobody could find anything. That was why Google was such a revelation, because until Google came along, finding things online was actually really bloody difficult. I mean, you either had to know what you were looking for and you use something like Yahoo, which was a directory where you go through different categories and hope that someone's added a link and the whole thing was done manually. Alta Vista was much more Google-like in the sense that it was an automated web crawler and they had algorithms that were kind of surfacing the pages, but usually it was just what was new. And then Google came along with PageRank. And until they started being evil and censoring and deciding that they were the arbiter.
Motto before they became evil.
Yeah, don't be evil.
Yeah, don't do evil.
Yeah, no, it was don't be evil.
Was it? All right. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, when you actually then dig into the history of where Larry Page and Sergey Brin got their money from and everything else, but at the very start, when it was just running, it was essentially just them running it, and they didn't have this whole team and they didn't have this global influence. Or also before they bought DoubleClick, which was the big internet advertising agency back in the day, and that became Google AdWords. And there was no censorship. You could find whatever you were looking for, and it would always surface. That's why they had the "I'm feeling lucky" button, because it was so good that you'd almost get to what you're looking for. And now it's just a travesty because it just, particularly on controversial subjects, but even these days on fairly mainstream subjects, Google is hopeless. You know, especially if you're trying to do rabbit hole research, Google is not what you should be using.
But let's just say that Mel's Hole did exist, right? And you had access to a Mel's Hole for a day. Right? What would you throw in it?
I've got a whole shit ton of stuff in a cupboard I could get rid of.
Yeah, so you just can use it as a rubbish depository.
Well, I don't know. Maybe because you could try sending it. I mean, because we have the technology now, you could try sending a drone down it, and even just to see. Because if you can put some lights on the drone, and send it down, you get some telemetry, so you've got a clearer idea of how far down it's gone and stuff like that, and then you can see how long it lasts. And a drone, I think potentially, I don't know, could you get a drone 15 miles down? I mean, under conventional thoughts, no, because it would melt.
Yeah. But
it would be interesting to see if there was, well, because you could stick some sensors on it.
Here's a good one from the chat, right? So Britmate wants to send Starmer.
That's a good idea.
That is, yeah. What someone else
actually,
actually, Britmate then goes, actually, all 650 MPs. Yeah. We could do that. Anybody else got any ideas what you would throw down Mel's Hole?
The EU Commission?
Yeah. Yeah.
Starting with, probably most of Congress too, actually. Gavin Newsom.
Bill Gates.
That silly Mayor Karen from Los Angeles.
I'd send Fauci. Fauci's got to go.
Spawn of Soros.
The Bilderberg Group.
Davos the Dalek. Yeah, he's definitely got to go.
What about the whole... Who's the other ones? Who's the guys that meet at the moon place? Is that the
at the moon place?
Yeah, it's not the moon, the owl. Moloch, the owl.
No, that's... oh, God, what's it called?
We've done that.
It's not Skull and Bones. No, it's Bohemian Grove.
Bohemian Grove. I think we should send them as well.
I think, did we done Bohemian Grove as a wrap? I think we did.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did do Bohemian
I
Grove.
seem to remember covering that one.
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah. What else? Did you put anyone in it that you'd want to bring back? Would you want to bring someone back if you could? This is a big question, right? Because have you ever seen Pet Cemetery, which is just one of King's nonsense books that has a terrible ending, like
Harry Potter.
books.
I mean, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows is a because the Resurrection Stone, which is one of the Deathly Hallows. And my answer to that question would be no, because on the basis that the dead are at peace, and if there's an afterlife, then they're kind of getting on with it.
And if they're not, they don't do any better. So yeah,
to bring someone back from that, you'd never get a whole person. It would always be an illusion. You'd never get back the person that you'd lost, because that soul would inevitably have been changed. And if that soul didn't want to come back because they were happy where they were, then you'd make them even more miserable.
Wouldn't it be funny though, right? If you say you tried to do something stupid like bring back your great grandfather that you'd never met, right? You threw him in the hole, his bones or whatever, right? And what came back out the hole wasn't your great grandfather, but you, because you were his reincarnation.
That's okay. Yeah, that's deep. This is why I think it's generally not a good idea to mess around with these things, whether it's Mel's Hole or the Resurrection Stone or Fountain of Youth or whatever it is. I think nature has its course, and everything ultimately is born and everything dies. And if you try and upset that, I think you're opening yourself up to unintended consequences, which potentially could be awful. I mean, the idea that you can, even if you found the elixir of youth and you found a way to stay alive forever, you'd be miserable, because you'd be, after a certain amount of time, everybody that you knew and loved would have died.
Exactly. It's like vampires and
you
Doctor
wouldn't
Who.
want to fall in love with anybody else because you knew they were going to die as well.
Yeah.
And you kind of live this half kind of
so
life.
Vampires become what, kind of decadent and uncaring, because they know that anyone that they fall in love with is going to become a complete fucking arsehole once they've made them a vampire, because it's the nature of the beast. And Doctor Who, he doesn't get attached. He doesn't like to get attached to his companions because he knows that they'll grow old and die.
Exactly. I mean, it's certainly a fascinating philosophical exploration, and it makes for some good TV and movies. I mean, some of the best books, the best movies, the best TV shows that I've seen explore questions like this, because it's fascinating, because ultimately we don't know. But one of the nice things about being human is this ability that we have to speculate and to wonder and to question.
So Matthew brings up a good one, a common theme in Anne Rice books, and that's true. And I think one of the things I'd never have thought of, right, was the way that Anne Rice brought, was it Claudia, the girl? Remember the little girl? So they made. No idea. Remember they made a vampire that was a little girl. Have you never read the Anne Rice book?
No.
Lestat? Oh, you need to read the Anne Rice books, mate. You should read them. They're good. So anyway, they made a vampire who was a little girl. And the problem was, she then turns out to be, by the time Lestat is there, or by the time that, that guy, Brad Pitt, who's a journalist and investigating them or whatever, by the time he turns up on the scene, Claudia is still a little girl, because she's never aged. she's like 200 years old, you know. But she's never aged, so she's stuck in a child's body. How annoying would that be?
That would suck.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
That would really suck. I mean, you'd have plenty of energy, but you'd get sick of it.
Mm-hmm.
You would just get so sick of yourself after a while. And also tripping over your own feet and stuff. I mean, one of the things about Mel's hole that I found quite interesting was the fact that they took an FM radio near the hole, and they would tune the dial. They picked up
old radio,
old music,
oldie timey,
and also a baseball game that they didn't realize until they looked it up, that the baseball game was played in 1963.
Oh, right.
But it's also, the other thing that makes me suspicious is that supposedly, according to Mel, all of his neighbors knew about this hole, and they all used it as a rubbish dump. But none of them have ever come forward to back up his story. No one else has ever tried to make any money out of the story, because given how viral it went back when it was much more difficult for things to go viral, you would have thought that one of the neighbors might have tried to make some money out of it. But then again, if the government swooped in and got all heavy-handed, then that would scare the shit out of most people.
Yeah.
So does that mean that the story is more likely to be true or less likely to be true? Because if it was just a hoax, you would think that someone else would jump on the bandwagon.
A lot of issues with the whole that leads to. Well, you've got to say it leads to somewhere different, because it's fine to dump your rubbish in it and all that, and put fishing line down it. That means nothing. Even the ice thing, that doesn't mean that much. You know, let's just say, for instance, it went down and some of it got infused with some kind of hydrocarbons that were down there or whatever. But the whole dog thing is creepy, right?
It's very creepy. Yeah.
But
it's very creepy.
Did it happen, you know? And then
and
then allegedly the government taking it and hiding it. What did the government do? How the fuck do you fill in a hole that you can't fill in?
Yeah, I was thinking that. I mean, I suppose you could put some sort of, you could put a concrete base over it. But then the thing is that and you have to remember that a lot of people have tried to find this hole.
And nobody's found
it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this story's been around for a long time, and it was very popular. And even back in the day, people were scouring all over trying to find this thing. And you would think that if the government had somehow seized it and had put a concrete base around it and built something over the top of it, you'd have to camouflage it really well to not make it stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, or just put a building over it and call it a government building, you know, like a listening station. But hold on a sec. Right, so Beats and Tapes has said, what wanted to the dog? First of all, Beats and Tapes, I'm not quite sure what you're trying to express at this point. Are you having a stroke? Or are you meaning what happened to the dog? Ah, right. he said happened. Right.
So charming.
No, I'm concerned about my listeners, because if someone's having a stroke, there needs to be you've got that golden hour. You want to get someone to them straight away. You know, this is concern, mate. This isn't. You know, I'm not being flippant. I want my listeners to continue living, especially the ones that donate to us. Anyway, and should you ever feel that you enjoy these conversations of an evening and want to donate to us, it's all there. Ko-fi.com/Sgt Grumpy. You can do it, you know. Right. So what happened to the dog, Beats and Tapes, was that one of his neighbours threw his dead dog in it. And I think the next day or whatever like that, he saw his dead dog, who wasn't dead, and was instead frolicking in the woods.
Mm.
And he identified it by the fact he was wearing the same collar and obviously looked like his dead dog. But we don't hear anything about did the dead dog approach the guy or come back to him and all that, and is he still living?
It didn't. It didn't recognize him.
Yeah. So was it his dead dog back, or was it some kind of alien clone saying, "Look, we've had enough of your fucking rubbish. Take it back."
It's a zombie dog.
Zombie dog. How would you tell? I mean, dog.
I guess
Let's
if it
face
was
it.
a zombie dog, it would probably try and attack him and eat his brain.
Okay, right. Fair point. I mean, I'm a dog owner, as you know, and dogs aren't the brightest. They're great. They're great creatures, but they're not the brightest.
I don't know. Some of them are. You look at a border collie at work. There's definitely intelligence going on there.
There's intelligence, but they're not the brightest things on the planet. But they tend to recognise their owners, so that there's got to be a replication of his dog rather than a reconstruction.
When if the dog had come back, you'd think it would be really hungry. In which case, it'd be more inclined to recognise its owner because it associates its owner with food.
Yeah. I think.
So
I think.
But it's also that it was the dead dog where they kind of lost me. I mean, if they were going for the hoax, they should have left that part out because it's a lot more believable without the dead dog.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
I mean, it's a stretch.
And I'm not
the
radio thing. The radio thing's neither here nor there because you don't know if that's that they could just have tuned into a 50s station. There's still stations out there that play 50s music all the time.
Sure.
Yeah, Radio 1 or something like that,
and I mean, the depth of it, I don't know. Could the fishing line just have gotten to a point where it started melting?
Well,
and he was just spooling out more and more line, but you would think that you'd have some idea of how warm it was, or how heavy it was.
Well, you see, that's that because you would have to have got some kind of weight on the end of the fishing line, to drag it down. I don't know. It's just it's a weird one. It is a bloody weird one.
Well, that's why when you said, "Have you got any idea what we talk about tonight?" I thought Mel's Hole, and credit to AJ and Hecklefish over at the Y-Files because that was where I first heard about it.
Is that the first time you'd heard about Mel's Hole? Oh, right, okay.
Yep.
So I had heard about it before, but I hadn't given it that much. And mind you, I've listened probably in my time to most of Coast to Coast. What was it? The Cola Deep Borehole, right? The Cola Deep Borehole. That's the one. Let me see, because Nick, was it Nectaridis or Beats and Tapes or somebody gave us some facts on it. I think it went down to 12 kilometers. And they found fossils at 6.4 kilometers deep, which is taking you back 2 billion years, apparently.
And they couldn't go any deeper because it got too hot and it was melting the drill bit.
Yeah, it was 190 degrees C at 6.4 kilometers. So God knows what it would be at 12. But where was the one that had the eerie sounds from it? Was it that one or was it somewhere else?
Well, Mel's Hole, there was lights. There was strange lights that came out of it. But I don't know about any sounds. Right.
So the Kola Super Deep Borehole is the deepest man-made hole on Earth, reaching 12,262 kilometers, located in Russia's Kola Peninsula. Drilled for scientific research, it has become infamous for urban legends about hellish sounds, supposedly recorded from its depths. So the myth is, tabloids claim.
That's right, yeah.
Tabloids claim Soviet scientists lowered microphones into the borehole and recorded horrifying screams described as the sounds of hell. 17-second audio clip circulated widely, fueling supernatural speculations. Investigations revealed that no recording devices were used at the site. as they would not survive the extreme heat up to 180 degrees C. The infamous audio was traced back to hoaxes involving manipulated sound effects from horror films and radio dramas. Despite the myths, the borehole yielded significant geological findings, such as unexpected water reserves deep underground. Yeah. I mean, there's more water underground than there is in the ocean, apparently.
Yeah, but also need to remember, just for accuracy's sake, that we're not talking about free-flowing oceans. We're talking about water locked up in minerals.
Yeah, but we are also talking about large pockets of free-flowing water.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, not at massive depth, I don't think.
Hey, I'm not
just
sure.
because of.
Not sure.
But there might be. I mean, this is where.
Well, you see, the thing
is where we can segue into Hollow Earth a little bit, because all of this stuff ties into Hollow Earth.
Because when you get depth, you get pressure, and that would keep the water liquid rather than turning into gas or steam.
And
so it could be superheated water. And is that not what Iceland runs on, basically? Superheated water.
Sure. There's other places in the world that use geothermal power. Yeah. But there's also, I mean, when we're talking about Hollow Earth, there are a lot of it's another one of those very common myths that exists. I mean, it's like Noah's flood. Almost every culture has a flood myth, and almost every culture has a myth about people who live underground. And the concept of hell is actually fairly recent, and is mainly just a control thing. And also, as you rightly pointed out, the deepest that we've actually ever drilled that we know of is 12 kilometers. And that's barely into the crust. And everything else that we know about the center of the planet is based on seismic surveys, effectively, where they're bouncing seismic waves around the inside of the planet and looking at the density, and they can sort of figure out roughly from that. But it's speculation. I mean, they're educated guesses, and they're good educated guesses, but that doesn't exclude the possibility that, as you said, if there's free flowing water, then maybe there's pockets of space deep underground that are big enough to support life. I mean, all of the legends about Agartha says there's 2 million people living in a highly advanced civilization deep underground. And people. Well, that's a good question. I mean,
because
and it also links to the UFOs, because what if these UFOs are actually coming from out from underground? Because there's legends from the Ladakh region in India that talk about UFOs that come out of the ground and out of the mountains.
Well, see, that's one of the things that leads me to this Amazonian tribe, and I can't remember its name. But apparently they were talking to them about lights in the sky or whatever, and aliens and stuff like that. And they had no conception of aliens until they showed them, a reconstruction or an image of what we would term a grey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they went, "Oh, that's an Kumabumba or something like that. They live underground." So they just accepted that. Yeah. Well, we know who those are. Those are the guys that live underground.
Sure.
And, why couldn't it be? I mean, let's face it. Coelacanths have been living on the planet for 65 million years, and for 65 million years, we thought they were extinct. Or they allegedly went extinct 65 million years ago, and yet they're still fucking here. When we dig one up, we dredge one up from the depths.
Absolutely. And I mean,
they don't need to be aliens, Matthew. They don't need to be aliens if they're living here underground. Why would they need to be aliens? Why aren't they, in effect, the indigenous people?
Well, they could be humans that went underground millennia ago to escape natural disasters.
Now we're into the time machine. the troglodytes and the ones that went underground to escape the disaster and never came back up and turned into like trolls.
But why would they have to turn into trolls?
Well, they end up with big eyes because it's dark, right? So you either end up if you live in the dark, you either end up with massive eyes or no eyes at all, right?
Yeah.
Generally,
But then
right?
the legends about Agartha say that it's an actual civilization. They don't talk about trolls. There's clearly some sort of technology, and they clearly get light and heat from somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think
I mean,
they could be humans. I think they can be a completely different. I mean, if you think about it, things like amphibians and stuff like that live in mud and half in water and half out, but they're always in the moisture and like to be in the mud and all that. So they could live underground. You know what I mean? And if they evolved to the point where they had they had intelligence, why wouldn't they live underground in preference to living above ground where the sun's going to, dry them out and ruin their skin?
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, bear in mind that the planet is 4 billion years old, and humans at a stretch have been around for 150,000 of those.
Yeah.
What's to say that there wasn't in Earth's distant past some kind? I mean, what I'm thinking, this you're going to probably laugh at me for this, but there's a really interesting episode of Star Trek Voyager, which is about a Star Trek vessel that's stranded in the Delta Quadrant, which is literally the other side of the galaxy. I'm not going to go into loads of Star Trek details, but
You don't need to know Star Trek.
okay. Well, there's one of the Voyager episodes where they encounter this alien race of dinosaurs, and they actually recognize certain traits and features as having evolved on Earth. And the crew of Voyager gets itself into all sorts of trouble because they're like space nomads. They have these ships, and they're completely xenophobic and don't interact with other species.
The dinosaurs, though. Yeah.
But they have conspiracy theories in their own culture about their own
The dinosaurs.
origins. Yeah, they're sentient dinosaurs that develop space travel essentially, and they work out that they left Earth and that they were a highly advanced race of dinosaur that saw the cataclysm coming and built a big spaceship and escaped Earth and ended up in the Delta Quadrant. And then they brutally punish anyone who says they originated on Earth. And it's just I mean, it's crazy. But what if some ancient species on this planet got really advanced and realized there was some sort of cataclysm coming and went deep underground, for example, and they found some space underground that they could set up some technology and have a civilization and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah. Right, hold on a second. Chat room people, we've got 3 or 4 people speaking in the chat regularly. We have 45 concurrent viewers apparently at the moment, 44 now, right? Come and talk to us. If you've got something to say, ask. We won't bite your head off. We love and encourage.
Yeah, I will try not to let John bite your head off.
We will. We love and encourage new people to come and talk to us because we are desperate for more information. So we have these amount of people on, which is really, really good. We are loving it. We hope you're enjoying it. Because so far we've got 44 concurrent viewers and we've had 333 views. Now that's scary. 333. But yeah, come on in. And you know what? If you like it, hit the like button because that helps the algo. And I hate to say it, but we are at the behest of YouTube when it comes to promotion and stuff like that. But anyway, let's carry on.
Yeah, so, but maybe if we stream more on Twitter, we might.
Well, I don't think this is YouTube stats because I couldn't find the Twitter thing. It wouldn't work for me. I don't know if it's working for you. What was I going to say? Oh, Fluffy Columbus says I'm not sure. He is about to have a bath. So Gary, I haven't had a bath for years. When was the last time you had a bath? Ed, have you ever had a
The last time I had a bath
was in
well,
Germany.
I have a bath, and I had just had I just had the bath replaced because I didn't want to get rid of it. But I have a bath like 4 times a year.
Yeah.
The last time I used the bath was because I didn't want to use the shower.
I like a bath,
and
right? I like a bath. Frothy Columbus says, I was right. So I like a bath, but it's fucking disturbing when you could narrow down the last time you had the bath to a separate continent.
Yes, that's true. I mean, the last time the main reason I like a bath is Epsom salts. Particularly after strenuous kung fu sessions, or if I pull a muscle or something, soaking in an Epsom salts bath is
Profane
one of
truth.
the best ways to
welcome.
Reveal.
New name. Profane truth. I like that. That's a cool name.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Sorry, Ed.
Truth kind of is profane, certainly in 2025.
Oh, isn't it just, mate? Isn't it? Well, what is the truth? That's the problem. We've got so much differences that we don't actually know what the truth is. Epsom salt. I love to soak my feet in Epsom salts. They feel brilliant after you've done it as well. Gets rid of all the hard skin and all that. It just disappears. But anyway, apart from that, see the things you find out on this channel. Do you watch Stargate?
I love Stargate.
Right. Did you watch the one on the ship with Robert Carlyle?
No, it was rubbish.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was pretty damn good, actually. I quite enjoyed it. What was it called? What was the one on the ship with Robert Carlyle? I met Robert Carlyle in Glasgow.
Yeah, it was after Atlantis.
He's short. He's really short, and actually fatter than you think.
Prometheus or something. Let me have a look. You got me. I think it was the name of a ship.
I liked Atlantis. Atlantis was quite good.
Let's have a look. I'll tell you in a minute.
Prometheus was a ship that they built.
Stargate Universe.
Stargate Universe. So they came across their own descendants on a planet. And when I mean their own descendants, I mean they came across the descendants of themselves on a planet because of the way time dilation or some fucking around with wormholes and things happened. They ended up coming to a planet where their descendants, right, had established a colony. That's mental.
I found the whole premise of Stargate Universe a bit over the top, and I don't know.
The problem with Stargate Universe is you've got to throw physics out the window, and that's fine if the story's good enough, right? If the story's good enough, you can suspend disbelief, right? Because the story will carry it. But if the story's not good enough, then you can't. And in some respects, that's where films like Interstellar fall down, right? Because the story's nonsensical, you know, collapsing in oxygen because the fucking plants have started dying. It would take thousands of years for the oxygen to change that quickly. So you would have thousands of years to do it, not like decades. So the whole story and the whole premise in Interstellar is just a ridiculous movie. But Star Trek, the stories are so good that you can allow them to have warp travel and not have time dilatation. See, the problem with traveling faster than light is time dilatation. So what happens? You send your spaceship off on a 5-year trip and it comes back 500 years later.
Yeah, but in Star Trek, there's something about the warp bubble. I don't know. The thing that I like about Star Trek is that they always
it's not physics.
Well, no, but they've concocted some.
Yeah,
thing.
It's a story. The story keeps you going. Yeah. That's what it does.
And it's like the way that they get around, because the whole thing about teleportation and beaming people up and down is that you have the what's called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle in quantum mechanics or quantum physics, where you can basically separate the pieces, but putting them back together properly. But in Star Trek, all of the transporters have Heisenberg compensators to just magically account for that little inconvenience.
See, the thing that always got me was the Star Trek teleporters had buffers, right? Remember? Right?
Yeah.
They always had buffers because Scotty used to go, he's in the buffer, right? Now, the thing was, if you were ill, right, why wouldn't you just teleport yourself from one deck to another and you'd be recreated without being ill?
That's a good question.
Yeah. See, you wouldn't need a doctor. You just teleport. Just teleport a few feet, and you've been. See, the problem is though, if you are teleported, you are disassembled at the molecular level, transmitted through space and time using quantum entanglement or something like that, and then put back together. Right? How's that you?
Yeah, exactly. And that's Bones McCoy, because he was one that always hated the transporter.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that he would say about it were similar to that. But again, the story is good and they make it work, and they come up with the Heisenberg compensator, which is a magical little doohickey that fixes some of the problems with quantum physics. And they make it work and they turn it into a good story. But it gets really freaky. I mean, there's a double episode of Deep Space Nine called Past Times, which does the rounds on Twitter from time to time as, ooh, look, Star Trek predicted the future, because they actually have, they're sent because of a transporter accident, because of tachyons on the hull of the ship that interfere with the transporter beam and end up sending the crew 200 odd years in the past, and they end up in 2024 in a dystopian America that looks frighteningly like actual 2024 America, although actual 2024 America has the fentanyl zombies, and they in the Star Trek episode there was just people in tents and down and outs.
Really? And when was that filmed? 80? 90?
No, 90s. So look.
So Next Generation was 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, Next Generation was late 80s, early 90s.
Do you remember how the Next Gen finished?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Do you not remember something about human DNA? There'd been some kind of message on it or something. I can't remember exactly, but there was something at the end of Next Gen about it was everything tied back to humans. Everything in the universe tied back to humans. We were, I think, the ancients.
Well, that was Stargate. I mean, Stargate is the
but
premise.
No,
behind
we weren't
that
the ancients. We weren't the ancients in Stargate.
No, the ancients look distinctly human.
Yeah, but we weren't the ancients.
Well no, that's right. We're the second human species to evolve on the planet.
Yeah.
According to
because the others had ascended and moved off.
Mm-hmm. Right, so season 3 of Star Trek was, where are we?
I don't know about Deep
1997.
Actually, right, okay, and you know, we're completely off topic now, but we've gone there, right? So let's go down to Star Trek. So I'm an original series and Next Gen guy. I love both of them. They are my top 2, right? Now, if you want to pick a third place for me, it's quite tricky because I really liked Enterprise, right? But I think on balance, I'd probably give it to Voyager.
Okay.
Right?
Are we including all of the new nonsense?
No. Apart from Lost Chapel, there's no redeeming features about the new nonsense.
Well, yeah, I mean, Discovery was complete nonsense. I
never seen it, mate.
Strange New Worlds.
Strange New Worlds is okay. It's not as good as either Voyager or Deep Space Nine.
Right. My list would probably be Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, original series at Enterprise.
OG down at 4.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bill, but I just find William
I put OG.
really irritating.
See, it's probably just it's just I
So
grew up.
It's a generational thing.
It must be because I grew up. OG is number 1.
The thing is, I loved the original series until Next Gen came along, and then Deep Space Nine, which was essentially Star Trek trying to take viewership from Babylon 5 because they were ridiculously similar.
I've got that, but I haven't watched it.
But Deep Space Nine is completely different, and it was supposed to be different because they gave it to Ira Stephen Burr because
Matthew Blackman's made a tactical error here, right? He's watching us, and his wife is obviously in the room because he's just said Deep Space Nine was shorter, less fill-in episodes, and I enjoyed it more than all of them. And then he goes, "My wife is rolling her eyes."
Matthew, I can so relate to that. I really can. I'm not. I'm single at the moment, so I can watch whatever the hell I like, which is awesome. But I've been in relationships with women who just didn't get it, and obviously the relationship didn't last. But
so
here's
the question for you, right?
There are women who like Star Trek, though, but
there are.
It's more of a man thing,
or
a boy thing.
Star Trek or Star Wars? You only pick one: Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Star Trek.
Okay.
But
asking me to choose, that's like asking to choose between two kids.
Yeah.
It's
or like left foot or right foot, you know?
Yeah, it's almost I was resent being made to choose.
Yeah, okay.
Because they're different as well. Okay, but
have you watched and I'm sorry if people are bored now. If you are bored, let us know and we'll move on to something else. Yeah, I probably am a bit of a Trekkie, but okay. So what about Farscape or Firefly?
Probably Firefly.
Farscape.
Although I didn't really get on with either of them. I mean, I watched both.
I loved Farscape. I loved Farscape. Firefly has grown on me. Not at the time, I wasn't that great on it. On Nick Torridis is a Star Wars boy.
Did you see Serenity, which was the movie based on Firefly?
Serenity was actually pretty good. I'll give you that.
And also, Farscape was a little bit too much Muppets in space.
Oh, I loved Farscape. Fucking loved it. It doesn't help. It probably didn't help that I loved Claudia Black.
Right. Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
That's
and my wife kind of looks like her, so yeah.
I think you like Stargate Atlantis as well, then?
Oh, I loved Stargate Atlantis. Yeah. I mean, Stargate. Stargate's just, there's not a lot to dislike about Stargate, but Stargate original, definitely number 1. Then probably Atlantis. Yeah. Stargate Atlantis. And then obviously I liked Universe. I quite liked Universe. So that would be my top 3.
I probably didn't give it enough of a go because I was still resenting the fact that Stargate Atlantis and Stargate SG-1 came to the end.
They all did. They all came to abrupt, unnatural endings. Yeah. Farscape ending was terrible because they rushed it because they should have had another season. That was a problem. That was the problem. And that's another thing. Farscape should have had another season, or it should have had a movie to wrap it up. And Stargate, in some respects, got that. You know, it got the movie to wrap it up. You got a couple of movies, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And they didn't wrap very much up, frankly.
so yeah,
What about
go on.
no? What about the Star Trek movies? Which one was your favorite?
Star Trek movies are a kind of mixed bag, right? But I think that my favorite is the one. Was it? What was the one? The Search for Spock when they went back to get the whales.
No, Search for Spock. No, it's Voyage Home.
What was the one where they went back to get the whales?
No, I think that was Voyage Home.
Right, Voyage Home. Then I think that was my favorite Star Trek movie.
Because that's after the Search for Spock, which is after.
Oh right, yeah, because Spock was back, wasn't he? Because I remember them fucking about in San Francisco, and I thought that's just brilliant. That's just brilliant.
Can you tell me where are the nuclear vessels?
Yeah, where do you keep the nuclear vessels? Are you Russian?
Oh dear. So, where are we at? We've managed to completely stray. We've
we're going through
down Mel's hole.
We're going
and we've ended up in Star Trek.
We're going through sci-fi TV series now, and if if you don't like it, let us know and we'll change it. Profane Truth says 7 and 9 would have looked good. No, you're wrong, mate. Profane Truth, 7 and 9 would have looked fucking incredible in a miniskirt.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
although the figure hugging bodysuit was nice too.
It was. I mean, she I remember reading something that she said about that suit, and it was like, it was incredibly difficult to wear because it was so figure hugging. You cannot, and can you imagine? I mean, you're working in a studio because in those days you were under big lights and things. Because I think Next Generation and Voyager was filmed on film. Originally it wasn't made digitally.
No.
Back in
Deep Space Nine as well.
Yeah, these were all made in film.
I mean, I think that the only part that was digital were the special effects.
Yeah, but do you not think it gives them a look and a feel that you don't get nowadays? Because you look at like Strange New Things, which I think is pretty well done. I mean, I don't really complain about it, and I quite like the characters, but it's too clinical. You know what I mean? It's not cinematic. It's like watching a soap opera. You watch Coronation Street or Emmerdale, and everything's pin sharp. There's nothing cinematic about it. It's pin sharp. Whereas you watch a movie and see, this is this quest for perfection that people have these days. And to be fair, I've had this argument with Ben as well. I said, because Ben keeps going on about he needs a better camera, and I goes, you don't. Your camera's fine. Your camera gives a great picture. People will put up with a lot of shit on YouTube as long as your audio's good and your content's good. The image doesn't matter because people aren't there to watch a movie. They're there to listen to your content and to interact with you. So I don't think you need that kind of... You don't need to be pin sharp on YouTube. It's nice to have a good camera and all that, but you don't need it. I don't think you need it. And that's proven because there are people out there who, like that guy that does the gym stuff, and all he does is he puts a Rode on his jacket, which gives him reasonable audio, and then he fucking does his workout and talks to the camera, and his video's awful, but his audio's fine, and his content's brilliant. People want that. They want to feel engaged.
Well, yeah, each to their own. I mean, this is the nice thing about YouTube is that everybody, regardless of what they're doing, can find some sort of audience, whether it's a really
Yeah.
small audience or whether it turns into a really big audience.
Yeah.
And it also keeps them off the mainstream media, which is always good. But also, if you think about talking about camera quality, the quality of the video cameras that were used to shoot Star Trek and stuff
Mhm.
were far lower resolution than your average phone. And I mean, phone cameras do auto stabilization, and
Phones are
there's
shit. The problem is the sensor's too small, right? So the pixels are tiny. That's the problem with phones. And yeah, you get a great sharp picture, but there's
but most of the thing,
there's something lacking in it, you know. And I might be wrong, you know. Call me an old arsehole, but there is something lacking in a phone picture quality. It's too clinical. It's just too clinical. It's like AI. When you see AI, you can almost always tell that it's an AI generated video.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, it's interesting how AI imagery is, yes, it's getting better and better. Maybe we'll get to a point where it's impossible to tell. But if you really watch it, there is something unnatural about it. It's like the way that there's always some tells, and it's the
Yeah.
same with the images. Um, and yeah, I don't know, but then again, it's advancing so quickly. So pretty soon they'll probably be able to do. I mean, we've got things like Sora and stuff. Some of the videos that Sora
Oh,
produces are amazing.
I think AI is going to get to the point where it's going to be able to make movies for you, and I think that's going to be a problem
I think it's going
because
to be a massive shame.
yeah, because you're going to get movies that the majority of people will like, right? But you're not going to get those movies that move you. You know, those ones
AI
that,
is not going to produce a Lord of the Rings.
well, yeah, but you're not going to get the movies that have, and it doesn't need to be a Lord of the Rings. There are movies out there, and you know, there are movies out there that just they hit you in the gut, and you feel it viscerally, right? And I don't think AI is going to be able to do that. In fact, one of those movies, and Matthew Blackman said, "Can I point out to Ed?" And I don't know why he's pointing this out to you, but in V for Vendetta, Natalie Portman was kidnapped, confined, and mentally abused. She had Stockholm syndrome when she made her profound statements. This might be something to do with the fact that you use that V thing as your yeah, okay, yeah. Well, we know that, and so.
Yeah, but if we're going to switch to V for
No, we're
Vendetta,
not.
then the reason that V did that to her was to wake her up.
He did. Julie's switched to I liked old Perry Mason. Well, you know what, Julie? I'm not I'm not a great I'm not a great lover of I don't really like kind of trial movies that you know, like do you remember Law and Order and Perry Mason and all that? I don't like that kind of stuff. I'm not a great fan of it.
Um, Perry Mason was all right. I can't say I was a massive fan.
Yeah.
Um, but it still seems somehow better quality television than the stuff that's being churned out now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is.
And also, I think part of the problem is actually too much CGI. If you look at the
Oh,
original Star Wars movie, so much was left to the imagination, simply because they couldn't do all of the special effects that George Lucas wanted to
yeah.
because they didn't have the technology. And the effects that they did were completely groundbreaking, but there was still plenty and unless a series or a movie or something leaves something to the imagination, I don't get engaged with it.
Have,
I find it really
yeah.
difficult.
Have you ever seen The Eternals, the Marvel movie?
I don't think so. Although, have I? I don't know.
It's nearly all special effects. right?
I'll have to see.
I'm not sure if it was filmed on a volume or not, but it was nearly all special effects. It's a freaking awful, awful movie.
No, I haven't seen it.
It's awful. It's just awful. What you want, see, this is the problem because I think a lot of the old stuff was just good because it had good stories. And people put the time into the story. I watched a movie the other night, which was complete and utter rubbish, right? Jack Klugman was in it. And it was kind of amateurishly acted, but it was compelling to watch. I watched the whole thing, right? And it was, I really enjoyed it. You know, it was set in the 60s or something like that, because Jack Klugman wasn't that old. He was a cop. And this guy had killed, this CEO guy, right, had killed his wife to get her money because she was worth like 12 million or something like that, which was a lot in those days. And he'd staged her, he'd killed her and then staged her death in a car crash. And then he was sitting in the house and nobody'd found the fucking body. This was the problem. Nobody'd found the car, right? So he had to phone the police and say his wife was missing. And of course, Jack Klugman turns up. And he's just been Jack Klugman, you know. Oh, okay, your wife's missing. We'll have a look for her and all that. And they're in this kind of small village where they were honeymooning. And then this woman walks in and says, "Hi, darling. I'm sorry I had to run off the other day because we had an argument, but I needed some space and now I'm back." And this guy's going, "You're not my wife." And she's going, "Of course I'm your wife." So that fucking goes on for like the whole movie. She's pretending to be his wife. And of course, then it turns out she's not his wife, and she tries to kill him, or she's trying to kill him, and she's got an accomplice who's a priest who's trying to kill him as well. And then he kills the priest, and the whole thing eventually boils down to the fact that Jack Klugman set the whole thing up because they knew that he'd killed his wife, but they couldn't prove it. So they did this to get enough evidence.
Oh, dear.
I mean, it was a crazy movie, but it was brilliant, you know? And it kept me entertained and captivated enough to watch the whole thing. Whereas some of these new movies, like, and people, I mean, call me cynical and cold-hearted, right? But see that Wild Robot movie? I watched 10 minutes of it, and I thought, this is fucking shit, right?
I haven't seen that one.
It's a cartoon, right? I mean, people will now castigate me because I called it a cartoon, right? In my book, it's a cartoon, and it's shit because it's just shit. I just didn't like it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I have a massive issue with most. It's rare these days that I find something new that I enjoy. They do exist.
Yeah.
But at the same time, one of the things that I've enjoyed recently was Silo, which is another one of those fairly dystopian kind of things that, again, it leaves a lot to your imagination.
Right.
There's a lot of questions.
Careful, because I'm only on episode 3, I think, of season 2.
I'm not giving any plot twists or anything. Right, okay. I mean, I thought it was excellent. But one of the things that I like, it goes back to what I was saying before about it has to leave something to the imagination. There have to be questions. I have to be mentally engaged with the series, and there's very few that do that. It either has to be
the standout for me over the last 4 years, and it was quite good because I think it started in 2020, right? The standout for me was The Expanse.
Brilliant.
Fucking loved it.
Expanse and Game of Thrones.
Yeah, Game of Thrones without question, but Expanse, loved it. Absolutely loved it.
The Expanse was superb. The books are brilliant as well.
I didn't realise there were books, but yeah.
Yeah, no, they're written by
absolutely brilliant.
J. Michael. It's called, well, it's not a him, it's a them, because he's J. Michael Corey is a pen name for two people, and I can't remember the names off the top of my head. But one of them, I think they're both based in Austin, Texas, and one of them was George R.R. Martin's assistant from Game of Thrones.
Right. Okay.
And you can tell when you read the books that there's not Game of Thrones influences, but you can kind of, when you realize that the writers, the authors hung around in the same circles, it kind of makes sense, because there's an epicness to them. But I mean, The Expanse is just superb. It really is. The originality and some of the themes that it explores. It's very. You can tell that the people who made it were very influenced by Star Trek and Babylon 5 and Deep and all of them. You can see
Farscape.
Absolutely, you
Because
can see influences.
The whole, the cop, seeing the vision all the time. Seeing him. Remember when the cop gets killed, but what's his name keeps seeing him, keeps popping up in his head and things like that. That's very Farscapey, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, and that's superb.
I agree. Yeah, but that's a big standout for me. House of the Dragon is okay. It's okay. It's not as good as Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones captivated me. House of the Dragon hasn't.
Game of Thrones is good. The books are infinitely better.
Are they?
Apart from the last one, which of course he hasn't finished yet.
Yeah.
But in terms of, again, originality and the immersion as well, there's both Game of Thrones and The Expanse. The universe is very immersive. The books are as well, and the both TV shows manage to capture that essence within the books. Although the story diverges, and you can kind of understand it because it's a completely different medium, and there's some things that they just they didn't have the time to do, so they have to sort of shorten it, but they still capture the overall feel and the essence of the universe that the authors have created.
Okay. So here's sorry.
No, go on. I was just going to say that the main thing about Game of Thrones that I really appreciated was it was around about the time that I got my first Kindle. And no, honestly, when it comes to Game of Thrones, particularly Game of Thrones is...
I thought you were going to say something else.
No. No, because the Game of Thrones books are absolutely enormous. I mean, they're inches thick.
Oh, they're a bit like Lord of the Rings, are they?
Bigger, huge. And Game of Thrones is the same. And it wasn't until... Because I bought the Game of Thrones series for my Kindle, went on holiday.
Yeah.
And then my partner at the time got the books in paperback from an aunt as a present. And literally the stack of books, I wouldn't have been able to put them in my luggage to take them on holiday.
Fuck's sake. I read Lord of the Rings in 3 days, right? That was 3 18-hour days. It took me that much time to read it, but it was brilliant. What? Matthew Blackman says Amelia Clark has suffered 2 aneurysms recently.
That's
shocking. But, and we won't say it, but it could point to something that much of the theatrical people had to take. Anyway.
I'm not thinking it, you're not thinking it, but we're both thinking it.
Yeah. So
we're not allowed to think it, but we're not saying it, but we're thinking it.
What was I going to say before I get distracted there, Brian Matthew? What were you talking? You were talking about...
Oh, we were talking about Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Lord of the Rings, no.
You were saying how Lord of the Rings had you immersed for 18 hours at a stretch.
Yeah, I know. What the fuck was it? What the fuck was I going to talk about? Oh, I was going to talk about reading books and then watching the movie, or watching the movie then reading the book. Right?
It depends on the book and the movie. I've found some...
No, my point is, sometimes you read the book and then watch the movie, right? And then sometimes you've seen the movie and read the book. Now, much of the Stephen King stuff, I'd already read the book, So I was already
I'm
disappointed
not
before I
a
saw the
fan of
movies.
Stephen King.
No, I'm not a fan of Stephen King either. And I keep winding him up by saying I much prefer Dean Koontz. Right? Who's another American horror writer who's nowhere near as famous as Stephen King, but it must keep winding him up. So much so that he left Twitter. But no, it wasn't due to me. But anyway, so I'd read most of the Stephen King stuff before I saw the movies. And most of the movies disappointed me. Although some of them had better endings because Stephen King can't write a fucking ending. Right? That was the problem I had. But I'd also read all the Dune books before I saw the first Dune movie, 1984's. What's his name? Lynch's interpretation of it.
Mm-hmm.
With Sting and Kyle MacLachlan, right? So that was Patrick Stewart, Gurney Halleck. That was the first that was my first. That was the first Dune movie that I watched, right? And having read the books before I'd read the movie, before I'd seen the movie, I'd read the books, and I'd read the books years before, and I saw the movie, and everything made sense, right? Everything in the movie made complete and utter sense because I'd read the book. But people that hadn't read the book thought the movie was complete and utter mince. In my mind, and I still say this, that movie, David Lynch's 1984, even though David Lynch doesn't like that movie is better than the ones that Denis Villeneuve have done, because the ones that Denis Villeneuve has done don't need you to have read the book. You know what I mean?
I like both. And I haven't read the book, but I like both.
I don't mind Denis Villeneuve's movies, but I made a review of Denis Villeneuve's first Dune, and I called it The Looking, I think, because he's always been on record as wanting to make a movie without any dialogue, and he tried it in Dune to a degree because there is so many scenes where people just fucking look. All they do is they turn and look at things. And it's ridiculous. It is actually ridiculous. But Dune to me is one of the best books I've ever read. And it's certainly one of the best movies I've seen. Even though it's a shit movie. It's one of the best movies I've seen.
I hate having to pick a best movie because there are too many of them. There are too many films that I've really enjoyed and go back and watch over and over and over again.
You can't pick a best movie, mate. You just can't.
No.
Because there's so many movies that you forget about, and then when you watch it again. I mean, I watched Sneakers the other night, last week. I went through that phase, remember last week, when I was watching like 80s and 90s things. In fact, you suggested The Net, and then I watched it. And The Net was actually pretty good, but it wasn't on a par with Sneakers or Hackers. Hackers was ridiculous. Hackers was an 80s fucking cyberfest. And I remember watching it the first time, and then I watched it the second time, and I thought, yeah.
Hackers was early 90s.
Yeah.
Sneakers was 80s.
No, they were both 90s. Oh. In fact, all of them were 90s. Hackers, Sneakers, and... Sneakers was 92, Hackers was 95, and The Net was 95. I think they were all 90s, right? But Sneakers was definitely the better movie because I watched Sneakers and I'm watching it thinking, holy shit, right? Because you know what there was in it? The NSA had made a device that could fucking listen to anybody's conversation anywhere. And were spying on their own citizens. And that's what turned out to be the case, didn't it?
Yeah.
30 years later, the fucking NSA get found out spying on US citizens. I mean, that was 30 years ago that movie was made, and it was right. It was fucking right. It's just crazy. Some of these conspiracy movies are just crazy.
Yeah, but they're good fun.
Mm. Yeah.
And some of them are not conspiracies. If you watch Oliver Stone's JFK, good film,
Yeah.
not conspiracy.
Well, I watched an Oliver Stone documentary on Ukraine, and that informed a lot of the stuff that I put into my how Ukraine started video. You know,
Ukraine on Fire is a must-watch for anyone wanting to understand it.
Yeah, brilliant. Right. Anyway, I think we're probably getting towards the end of the night, aren't we? Here.
Yeah, I think so. I'm starting to get a bit knackered.
Yeah, that's an hour and a half plus that we've done. Yeah,
well, that's a good amount of time. We've still got people in the chat, so we haven't put them all to sleep. So that's always good too.
Yeah, no, I think it says June was fantastic. June was. I mean, Frank Herbert was a brilliant writer. I mean, we could spend hours talking about science fiction movies. I'm a big science fiction fan. You know, that's probably my genre more than anything. I would say. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked science fiction. But yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll reconvene tomorrow night.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to let you know tomorrow afternoon. Okay. I may or may not be out for dinner tomorrow. I'm not sure. I've got a sneaking suspicion that I've gotten a dinner invite, but I might be wrong. So I'll have to let you know. Okay. Well, as soon as I hear from the person that I think I might be having dinner with, that I'm not 100% sure.
No worries. Let me know, and I'll see if I can line someone else up. But there's a lot to talk about tomorrow because the world has gone freaking mad.
Yeah, I mean, there is, like I said, I'm not 100% sure. I'll let you know.
I like Matthew Blackman says, I paid for membership. I'm staying until I get my money's worth. Right, Matthew. What I used to do with members was I used to give them early access to all the videos and things I put up. And I haven't put up many videos yet, but I'm back on the case and I'm starting to ramp up because I've just recorded one for Cult of UFO, and I'm going to start doing more videos for this channel as well. So you'll get early access to them, mate, before everybody else gets to see them. So that's one of your perks for membership. But yeah, I appreciate it. Right. Okay. So yeah, say good night, Ed.
Good night, Ed. No, thanks, John. It's been fun.
Yeah.
And thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thank you, everyone out there. And remember, like, share, subscribe, evangelize, spread us out there, because tonight we have hit some freaking numbers. We have hit some numbers tonight. 604 views.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, that's a big number for this channel. So I'm more than happy with that. So thank you very much. And we'll be back tomorrow in one way or the other. And certainly Ed and I will be back next Thursday, yeah?
Oh, definitely.
And we'll pick something that's maybe going to take a wee bit more time to dig into, because I think Mel's Hole was too short for us there, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I thought we might segue into Hollow Earth stuff, which we did a little bit, but then we ended up talking about films. So,
but you know what? I enjoyed it. You enjoyed it, and if the chat room hadn't enjoyed it, they should have said. And they didn't. So I'm pretty sure they enjoyed it as well. So thanks, everyone. You know what? It's been great for you.